Good morning. We'll just give a few seconds for people to join. Okay, fantastic. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this, which is the fifth in our series of cybersecurity webinars from Nostra. For anyone who hasn't met me before, my name is Gary Byrne. I am the Managed Services Director here at Nostra. As always, we'll start by thanking you again for joining us today, attendees from our last webinars, and also people who may be joining us for the very first time. For anyone who couldn't make the previous webinars, they are available on Nostra's YouTube channel, and we will share out links in a follow-up email after today's session. In every webinar, we discuss the importance of a multi-layered approach to cybersecurity. In the last webinar, we looked at Nostra Cloud Shield, which we talked about as a multi-layered cybersecurity service. It leverages Microsoft Business Premium security tools, as well as other market-leading security tools. In today's webinar, we're going to focus on early alerting systems, critical part of cybersecurity. They're packaged as part of our Nostra Cloud Shield offering. These services include extended detection and response systems, which is known as XDR, and also security information and event management systems, which you'll hear, which are known as SIEM, S-I-E-M. We will also focus on the importance of having a security operations center, which is known as a SOC, and that monitors your network and data in real time. As always, these sessions are best when interactive. So as always, any questions, please post them in the chat and we will handle them for you as we go. We will always leave time at the end of the session to deal with Q&A. We will be recording the sessions and we will send on the recordings and the slides to attendees afterwards. So with that, I'd like to welcome you all again, and I'd like to hand over to Erin O'Kane. Erin is our channel manager for Northern Europe for Barracuda. Barracuda are a global security company and a key partner of Nostra in protecting our customers from cyber attack. So Erin and Karen, over to yourselves.
Thanks so much, Gary, and thank you all for joining us. So we're here to discuss the partnership we have with Nostra, as well as why does XDR matter and what even is XDR, right? So with that, I would like to start off by using an analogy from one of my favorite holiday movies, Home Alone. And so for those of you who don't know Home Alone or maybe need a refresher, it centers around Kevin McAllister, who's an 8-year-old, the youngest of 4 siblings, and he was accidentally left behind as his family as they rushed off to grab their flights for a family holiday. Now, as Kevin is home alone, he is surveying his house and he starts hearing some grumblings from these guys, the wet bandits. And their whole objective is to burglarize homes that are unattended over the holiday season. So much like the burglars who are trying to case Kevin's house and understand when the right moment is to burglarize, we often see this with our malicious actors and our cybersecurity attacks that come in. And so as these wet bandits are planning their entry points and their objective of what to take, they want the high value items such as the cash, the jewelry, electronics, and the personal data, the personal documents, so that they can really utilize and take full advantage of the time they have within the homes. And so Kevin, being the smart little guy he is, said, no, thank you. I need to really evaluate my home and see where the entry points are that these wet bandits can come in and try and burglarize my home. I need to protect it. I need to understand, where they can come in, the front door, the windows, the garage, the back door, second floor windows, and even the chimney. So really understanding where all could be a threat within his home, within your environments. And so now imagine your business is at home and that cyber attacks are the intruders. You wouldn't just lock the door and hope, right? So Kevin, much the same way, he recognized all his entry points. And what he did was he developed a plan. He said, I need to go to battle. I need to go to war and protect myself against these wet bandits, these threats that are coming to attack my home. And so what he did was he looked at the whole house. He said, where are these entry points and understanding the visibility and maybe the vulnerable points in his house. He really had a better understanding and a plan to put in place. So what he did, he was able to rig traps strategically, place sharp ornaments under the windowsill, tar to slow them down. And what he was able to do by putting a plan in place and have that initial visibility was he was able to outsmart the bad guys and really turn that chaos into control. So with the power of Nostra and Barracuda XDR, we're able to do the same for your environments. It's not just a single lock on the door, it's that extended visibility and response. So utilizing Kevin's approach, we also have that multi-layered approach, right? Exactly what Nostra is doing for you today. So they're working with you to understand, what is it that's important to you? Is it the cash? Is it the jewelry? Is it your data, right? What's most important to you? And then how do you go about protecting those? What tools can Nostra help put in place to really safeguard your environment? Maybe it's the firewall on that front door. Maybe it's the tar coming up the stairs, or the endpoint protection securing your endpoints, right? So how are we putting that layer of protection around your environment? And then, as we all know, these products are great, but they're not foul-proof, right? So we understand that just like the wet bandits, these cyber criminals, these bad actors, are able to circumvent some of the things we have in place. So they're able to bypass the firewall. They're able to get in, but what happens when they get in? We need that visibility. So we need alarms, we need cameras, we need to understand where the burglars have gone and how they bypass our system, and then what we do to ensure that nothing major is taken, right? So we respond, we work with the team to understand where the valuables are, where it's coming from. So as they're breaking in, how do we prevent that? What are we doing to make sure that anything that was taken, we recover? So that's the final step in our multi-layered approach to security, is anything that was taken, we absolutely want to recover. And that could be things like your cloud-to-cloud backup. That could be things like following the incident response of where things have been happening. So in essence, I know that was very brief, but hopefully that paints a picture as to the ways in which visibility can help protect your environment, and the way in which a multi-layer approach really helps biggie up and prevent more threats that you're undertaking today. And with that, I know it's short and sweet, but I'll turn it over to Karen to walk through a real-life example of how this can be applied in your environments.
Thanks, Erin. So what we're going to run through is an example of where XDR becomes relevant in real life. And this is an example of a 365 compromise attack, and how things like MFA can be bypassed. You know, like Erin said, we have those solutions in place to protect from threats, but the environment is a lot more complex, attacks are more comprehensive, and things like MFA are not necessarily enough to protect us anymore. So from the hacker's perspective, they're going to deploy a hacking tool, and they're going to create a website that is impersonating Microsoft 365, which is something we see all the time, right? You look at the types of phishing emails that we're getting through, impersonation attacks are rife. Once they've created this spoofing page impersonating Microsoft, they're then going to create a link, and that link is going to take the user through to a website that is impersonating 365. They're going to embed that within a phishing email that is impersonating Microsoft support. And if you look at the link, the only difference really is that it says Office 356 rather than 365. So something really subtle that can quite easily be missed if a user is rushing or if they're not sure what to look for. They're going to send that email over to the user, and when the user clicks on that link, they're going to be taken to a convincing fraudulent page that, again, is impersonating the Microsoft login page. And because it's convincing, because there's no outward classifiers that this is a phishing email, they're then going to input their password and log in, or attempt to log into Microsoft. Because the hacking tool is so sophisticated, it's also going to prompt the user to authenticate with MFA. So again, it's all still looking normal, still looking convincing, and the user's just going to proceed as usual. And because again, like I say, that tool is so sophisticated, we're actually able to intercept that authentication token that is generated when the user authenticates via MFA. And these cookies, these tokens, allow a bad actor to access an account without re-entering a password. Because we've intercepted that token, we now have that full session cookie of the user logging into their 365. We can intercept that cookie and take a copy of it. And if we log on to the official authentic Microsoft 365 page, we can use a cookie editor tool to paste in that session ID token. And by a simple refresh on that page, we no longer have to use the password. We can get access into that account. And that is a key example of how something like MFA can be bypassed really easily. And then once we're in, I'm going to wait for the video to catch up because I think it's a little bit behind. Once we're into that account, what we can do is we can upload things like ransomware files into OneDrive. We can start to laterally phish other users within the business. And I think when we talk about the multi-layered approach, it's really key to understand that just because we get into one entry point, we're not necessarily limited there. Once a bad actor is in, that's when they can spread, and that's when they can really kind of do damage, access data, compromise settings, and increase the spread of that attack. If we look at how XDR Cloud deals with that, on the dashboard, we would have multiple alerts in place. So the first would identify an impossible travel login. So we've had two logins really close together from different places, and we know that's impossible. So it's going to flag that as a high alert for us to address. The second thing that it's going to identify is the detection of those ransomware files being uploaded into OneDrive, and it's going to flag that that's been uploaded. And then what we can do is use our auto remediation capabilities via our SOC to lock that account down and prevent that attack and make sure that they can't spread any further. So what we're doing with XDR Cloud is we're being proactive. It's no longer we have put solutions in place and we're waiting to react to a threat. We're proactively looking for those risks. We're proactively going to take the action and make sure that that account is locked down, and we're going to prevent any spread of that attack and neutralize that threat before it can really compromise us. I'll pass back to Erin.
I can say amazing. Thanks, Karen. And really, we know that that was a brief overview, but the key things we want you to take away is that Nostra is a security company, and they've decided to partner with Barracuda, who's been a security company for the past 20 years. And our whole goal in working with Nostra and yourselves is to really ensure that you have that multi-layer approach and that you have that visibility, because visibility, as you hopefully saw, is key when understanding where the burglar is going within your house, what all are they touching, what valuables are they seeing, and how are they spreading. So with that, Gary, I'll turn it back over to you, and please let us know if you have any questions.
Erin and Karen, thank you so much for that. Listen, really, really helpful, really useful. And for everybody on the webinar today, again, we keep talking about a multi-layered approach to cybersecurity, and Nostra always look at that and always add extra layers. In terms of what you're looking at today, which is extended detection response and SIEM and SOC, from a compliance point of view and from a regulatory point of view, certainly in relation to financial services and credit unions, I know we've other customers on the line. The first time that we saw a mention of these types of services was back in the original thematic review done by the central bank, which was about 10 years ago. So these systems have been around for the last 10 to 12 years. But really, over the course of the last number of years, they really have been adopted by business as something which is absolutely critical and absolutely crucial. So when you are answerable to bodies, when you do have inspections or when you do have reviews, these are the types of systems that they will be looking for people to have. And for everybody on the call, if you look at a cyber insurance form, they will ask you if you have a SIEM, if you have a SOC, if you have an early detection system. But I might ask Erin and Karen if you can tell us, because certainly from a Nostra perspective, and we tell people on every webinar, the last 9 months or so, the volume of attack that we're seeing is literally off the scale. What is it that yourselves are seeing over in Barracuda?
I think it's oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I think it's exactly that. But I think the other challenges that we see a lot of customers having is the inability to manage that. Talent is really expensive. There's a global shortage of talent when it comes to kind of IT and security in particular. And I think if we look at a customer's kind of general environment, there's a mishmash of different technologies in there. It becomes quite complex quite quickly. And having the time and the talent and the ability to trawl through all of that noise that is being generated and, identify the risks from the kind of general day-to-day noise is a challenge. And I think using our XDR solution, our service, you get the SOC team as an extension of your team, and it really helps to just drive internal efficiencies, right? All that time that would have been spent doing that, you can reinvest elsewhere, and it makes something that is really complex become a lot more manageable.
Thank you. And can I ask you, so, in every webinar, Nostra talks about data management and data protection and protecting the user, and the user is the risk. And of course, that is the case. And so with Nostra Cloud Shield and Cloud Shield 365, we've got a lot of that, locked down. But Erin, you gave the example of Home Alone, and it's quite correct, because, if there's 14 windows in the house and you only close 12 of them, well, then 2 of them are a risk there. So can you talk to us about how Barracuda protects the things that sit outside of traditional data user management, which are the servers, the firewalls, the network itself? So how we use those extra layers on top of Cloud Shield 365 to make sure all 14 windows are closed.
Yeah, no problem. And I think I keep mentioning this visibility word, and I think it's key, right? Just to understand what are all of your layers. And I think of the example of the chimney. Maybe that's third-party applications. Maybe that's some of this rogue IT that a lot of our customers have in their environment, where it's, I'm a user and I want this particular application, I download it, and now it's part of this environment, but that also causes a risk to the business as well. And so if you have that visibility from a Barracuda standpoint, it's watching all of those chimneys, all of the windows and the doors, and it's using cross correlation to ensure that we have all of that protected should something happen. Furthermore, if someone does come through the chimney, then we know that we need to block that off where it stands and ensure that where all to understand where in the environment they're going. Are they going down the chimney? Or are they going to the basement? Is that the data, the HR systems that it's attacking? Is it someone's email they're attacking? And where is that going? So that when we do the recover piece of it, if needed, when we do the recover piece, we know exactly where we need to go back to, where in our backup solutions we need to restore from, so that we have all that visibility and intel within our environments.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to bring in as well. So Gary Melvin, as always, is on the call, and Gary is our head of security and compliance. And Gary, I might just start as well, and Erin and Karen. So John O'Mahony has put a question up there. John, thanks so much. What does the product look like from the end user perspective? So given that there are constant threats, is there filtering, categorizing on reports for governance and for board reporting? So Gary, I might give that one to you if that's okay.
Yeah, so there's a portal available for yourselves, and there is a couple of things for the SOC actually filter out quite a lot of the day-to-day elements that comes in, and then only the issues that need attention are highlighted. But you see all the alerts and all the detections are actually in the portal. There is a board report then that comes out, and you can generate that every month, and we do that for the customers. But that gives a threat report of what threats are out there, so it's quite nice in terms of threat intelligence. And then it gives a overview of the alerts and tickets and incidents for the month or quarter, whatever you're looking at. So the reporting is very good, and it's board facing as well. So the reports that you get out of it are at a significantly high level that it's very good for the board, but the detail is there as well. So one of the examples there was you could get into the detail of an alert, and the alert not only tells you what the alert is, but it actually gives you the remediation steps for that alert. So there's quite a bit there in the portal for managing all of this, and the visibility and the governance oversight of the solution as well.
And Gary, we very often talk about the ability to report on an event as well as being absolutely critical. So just staying with yourself, can you please tell us, in looking at the Barracuda, what are the protections that are put in place to protect attacks as highlighted? And we talk every week about licensing. So what is the licensing that's required, just so we have that kind of closed loop on a multi-layer protection?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple elements to this one, Gareth. So the first one is, what we want to try and do is we want to try and stop attacks at source. And then if anything does happen, then we have the Barracuda solution there to actually detect if something does go wrong. But ideally, we're cutting out most of those. So in terms of Office 365, and as we seen in the example, MFA at the moment is pretty much, it's a necessity, but it can be easily bypassed. So what we have to do is, in an Office 365 tenant, have an MFA alone on its own is no longer sufficient. So what we have to put in is a whole load of configurations, and we call them conditional access policies. There's a few of them we put in as part of Cloud Shield. One of them is geolocation. So if your users don't need to be working outside Ireland and the UK, then we turn off everywhere else. That stops a lot of the automation of the ability for servers and automation phishing kits to be able to do stuff. We expire session tokens. So if somebody does steal a session token, as we've seen, we limit that to a day. It doesn't stop it in totality, but it actually limits it. So how long? It means somebody can't be in there for 60 days, 90 days, a week, going through all the data. So there's quite a lot of configuration that happens in the background, along with the alerts going into the Barracuda system. There's a sign-in risk and user risk. If a sign-in is detected or a user is detected as being compromised, the system can shut that down automatically. Now, there is licensing required for all of that. So it's the Business Premium and Azure Active Directory P2. So there is licensing required to enable that. At the moment, we're on a journey trying to move all our customers from Business Standard to Business Premium, so we can turn on these features to stop end users being compromised. I think last week was the highest week ever in Ireland being reported for phishing. And the amount of successful phishing campaigns that's been carried out. So this stuff is pretty much, it was bad, but it is on the rise. And I was looking at some of the stats then for the amount of phishing emails being sent out there, and it's in the billions per week. So they are becoming more sophisticated. We do need to have the licensing in order to turn on the advanced functionality to stop it. And then for the ones that get through, we need the Barracuda piece then to actually to be able to detect it, and the SOC then to be able to inform us that there's something going on here that shouldn't be.
Gary, you always talk about zero trust, and you're talking about phishing. The last week is the highest ever in Ireland. So, how do technologies like this then help us with a zero trust? And when you're finished, I'll hand over to Erin and Karen for what they're seeing in zero trust as well.
Yeah, so the zero trust is we hear a lot about it. So essentially, it's 5 years ago we would have trusted everything on the inside. So the internal network would have been trusted, the external network wouldn't have been trusted, and that barrier was the firewall. So essentially that barrier is gone now, because most organizations are mobile, they have hybrid working, people working from home, people working from different locations, different countries, different offices. So what's happening is this zero trust has come in to actually saying we're not going to trust our devices, and we're not trusting anything by default. So for that to kick in on Office 365, we need an extra layer, which is pretty much managing the endpoint and assigning a trust status to that endpoint. So where we're looking to get to is that if the user is not enrolled in your Active Directory, in your Azure Active Directory, and the device isn't compliant, we don't want to allow that access to your data. So even if we get to a stage where if the user isn't using one of your trusted devices, we don't want access to 365 data, then you cut out a huge amount of stuff. And one of the challenges we have is just getting to that piece, is getting people on the zero trust journey and tying down access to trusted devices. But that is, I've seen more activity in that in the last year, and then particularly in the last 3 months in Q1 of this year. So we see that accelerating over the next while, is that there will be access to your data is given only to trusted users on trusted devices, verifying their ID and coming from a compliant device. And that is something that will continue to happen. There is a big push moving away as well from bringing users in via VPN. Everything is becoming cloud. Everything is connecting into cloud. And as such, we need to make sure that the devices and the users are fully verified as they come in.
Gary, thank you. And Erin and Karen, I mean, that's very much the world you're operating in now as well, zero trust model.
It definitely is. I think it's a really interesting point, because particularly pre-pandemic, you look at the value that was held in the identity and in credentials alone, and the access that having credentials could get you. And I think that's where the shift is phishing emails are a business now, right? You look at the complexity of these hacking tools that bad actors have access to. You look at how AI has helped them become more efficient in building these phishing campaigns. And we need more layers than just, yes, okay, I've got your email address and your password, and I'm going to give you access to everything that you would on the network. And I think that's where zero trust is really important, because much like the theme of the rest of the presentation, it's the layers, it's the concentric rings of security that we need to put in place to make it more difficult for people to get access to what they shouldn't be getting access to.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate that. For anybody online, if there's any questions there, please just throw them into the Q&A, throw them into the chat. The follow-up from today's session in relation to what you're seeing here today is going to stay the same. So your account manager will be reaching out to you. You know, people who are still using Microsoft Business Standard, we need you to be using Microsoft Business Premium, so we'll be having that conversation. And for people who haven't adopted Nostra Cloud Shield, we will be needing you to adopt Nostra Cloud Shield. It's to protect yourselves. So we will be having those conversations, and we will, as part of that conversation, talk about what part Barracuda plays in that. Yeah. So the people, yes, sorry, Gar.
I was just going to say, on the Cloud Shield piece, it is a journey. So we have different levels of Cloud Shield. So typically we start you on the Cloud Shield standard, which gets all the security controls to protect you against in Office 365. Then we have a Cloud Shield Plus, which is plus the endpoint, which is we're securing the endpoint and making sure that's secure. And that's the start of the zero trust journey. And then the Cloud Shield 365, which is our upper version, that's where we come in, we add the Barracuda, we add the alerting, and that's the journey we want to get all our customers on. But we want to start off by making sure that you are fully protected at the cloud in terms of 365, then move you to bring in the endpoint and the servers, and then wrap around the SIEM, SOC, and the reporting then around that. So for the Cloud Shield piece, it's definitely a journey, and it's a journey that we want everybody to be on, and dependent where you are in that journey. But what we're showing today is probably towards the end of that journey, where it's around the SIEM, the SOC, and it's not just 365. It's putting agents on the servers, it's talking to the endpoints, it's bringing in the firewall. So it is quite and that's where the XDR, and there's a lot of terms bandied around in security, but the XDR just stands for extended visibility. So the X is for extended. So the extended visibility is looking at your 365, it's looking at your servers, it's looking at your firewalls, it's bringing in the endpoints for one total view of your security position across everything. And that's the journey we want to get you on. But what we want to do is start off first by securing the Office 365 environment, moving on to the endpoints, and then wrapping that around with the Barracuda SIEM SOC. So I hope that makes sense pretty much for everybody. And we typically don't do it all in one go. We do it in a staged journey.
And Gar, sorry, on that point, stage journey, frameworks we talk about on every single session. So how technologies like this help us align to frameworks such as the NIST framework, and Erin showed the identify, the respond there earlier on, and then the forthcoming DORA framework for people on the call as well. So, you know, it is a journey. How can technologies like this help you on that journey?
Yeah, and this is mapped exactly onto the NIST cybersecurity framework. So the NIST cybersecurity framework has multiple elements. This is in the protect and detect stage. So it has all the protections, and it has over 100 security controls applied across the organization. But the big thing is then with the SIEM and SOC, that's around the detect. So if we have something going on, we want to know about it. And then it also feeds into the recovery stage as well, because if something bad does happen, we won't have the logs there to know what has happened, when it has happened. So there is quite a bit in it. So when we look at and everything we do is around that NIST cybersecurity framework. So it's a really good framework that covers off everything that's going to be asked of us from DORA, everything that's going to be asked of us from NIST 2, which is yet to be signed in to legislation in Ireland. But I think everybody is encapsulated under some sort of data protection, whether it's just the GDPR, which in itself has a requirement to apply appropriate controls. And a lot of the stuff we do is now seen as just appropriate controls. It's no longer the upper end of the controls piece. It is just putting appropriate controls around your data repositories and around your applications and your users and devices. So it does feed in nicely into that, Gary.
Gareth, thank you so much. Okay, so for anybody on today's call, please, you know, if you're looking for more information, please reach out to ourselves, reach out to your account manager. If you don't have an account manager with Nostra, then my own email address will be sent over to you, gary.byrne@nostra.ie. Please reach out to me directly, and we will look after you in relation to the content today and finding out more about it. In relation to the next session, so the next session we're going to have is on Monday, the 7th of April at 11 a.m. We were going to talk about how to prepare for a penetration test in the next session, but we have changed that off the back of what we've seen in the last week to 2 weeks. Microsoft 365 security, the highest ever amount of phishing attacks in 1 week last week in Ireland. We have to re-emphasize the message on Microsoft 365 security, that it's at a criticality and it's the biggest risk that businesses have today. So we're going to be talking further on that on Monday, the 7th of April at 11 a.m. I would like to thank everybody for joining today. I would like to thank both Erin and Karen for joining us from Barracuda. We really appreciate it. As always, our Head of Security and Compliance, Gary Melvin. I'd like to thank all of the attendees, and just to say again that the slide deck will be sent over and the recordings to everybody who was on today's session. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks all.